How's it going, everybody? We're at another episode of Bodacious Rant with Burn and Rye. If you guys haven't done so already, feel free to check out our mid-year review. You know, our top fives of the year so far. We're already in July, so 5 more months and we're already in December. Like, what the hell? This is crazy. Speaking of just mind blown and craziness, we were talking about a show that we've lagged on doing reviews for just because I discovered it only last year. I think Burn, you've watched it from the very beginning since it premiered, right? Or no?
So I watched the first season when it came out, when it premiered, and then I lagged on the second season.
Okay.
It just, got lost in the shuffle, and I had to catch up to that in the lead up to, this season.
No, and I mean, I think it may be better doing that, to be honest. That way you just you're literally caught up really quick. But if you guys haven't guessed it already, we're talking about one of the best shows on television, especially the one that FX has put out recently, and that is The Bear Season 3. So we are going to be doing some minor spoilers. We're not going to dive too deep into stuff for those of you who haven't finished it or anything. So, when we start like, if you want to, you could definitely dip out now or like after we give our little ranting rating of this season, and then just come on back for the spoilers when you're all caught up and just kind of catch up. But if you do like the video, please give us a thumbs up. Any thoughts on the season, put in the comments. Ring the bell for notifications, and of course subscribe. We just want to keep growing the ranting community, and just let's just all band together. Why don't we? So real quick, since we haven't talked about seasons 1 and 2, my ratings for those are going to be 5 out of 5 for the first one, 5 out of 5 for the second one. Actually, you know what? Snap it. Let's go back. Number 1's a 4 out of 5. Last season's definitely a hard 5 out of 5. Best season so far. This one, I've been wrestling with it. I'm still going to give it a 4 out of 5. While it does have the pacing is all over the place. I think it does slow things down to a certain extent. We'll get into the spoiler on why I think they did it that way. But I still really enjoyed it. I love the characters. I think the writing is amazing. And just Io Edeberry, God, what's the main guy's name? I'm trying to think about it right now. Jeremy Allen White, Ebon, what's his name again? I'm sorry, I can't.
Ebon Moss-bachrach.
Ebon Moss-bachrach, and even and Abby Elliott from SNL. I think they all hold this show down really well. So hard 4 out of 5 for me for this season, Burn.
So for me, just to also give some context, for the first season, I would give the first season also a 4 out of 5, and the second season a 5 out of 5. 6 out of 5, 10 out of 5. I think season 2 is one of the best seasons of TV that I've probably ever seen, and I really enjoyed my time watching that, and it's been fun in the last week leading up to season 3, kind of texting you and giving you my thoughts about that season, because it's just been, that was something like I just wanted to talk about it the whole time. And if we had done a review of that one, and that would have been probably like an hour-long thing, because that one was so great. And so for me, this season, season 3 is going to be a 3 out of 5 for me. As you mentioned, I do think this season does try to do things differently in terms of pacing. The Bear has been known to have that sort of really rapid fire, quick pacing. Everything's super high energy almost all the time. It's overwhelming. It was certainly overwhelming for me, which is why I kind of lagged on watching season 2, because season 1 was such a hectic and anxiety-inducing experience, and didn't know if I wanted to jump right back into that. But I'm glad I did end up doing that eventually. And this one sort of scales things back, gets a little bit more introspective, a little bit more introverted, much like, the character of Carm this season. So, I do appreciate that choice in trying to do something a little bit different. You don't want a show to sort of stay the same way for too long, because otherwise it'll get stale. If you have your favorite dish for too many times, you're going to get bored of it or get tired of it after a certain amount of times that you have it. So, I do appreciate them trying to do something a little bit different in season 3. That being said, I don't think they probably executed on that as well as they could, or as well as they've done in the past. Because certainly there have been moments in the first two seasons where we do get those moments where things sort of slow down and we get sort of character-centric episodes, and those episodes sometimes end up being my favorites, and that is certainly the case here, in a couple of episodes, them being more character-centric and them being, in my opinion, the better ones of the season. But I think overall, I think it's sort of like in a narrative halt. It feels like in terms of plot progression, we don't really get too much on that end, and that's not the worst thing. But I feel like at the same time, we did get a lot of plot halting. With the characters, we got a lot of characters that didn't feel like they grew this season as much from the place that they ended up at the end of season 2. I felt like a lot of the characters sort of ended up in the same place or kind of are in the same place as that. And it also felt like some characters that got a good amount of focus last season and we got to learn more about them sort of like disappeared at times in this season. And that was also kind of unfortunate with characters that I really enjoy. I really enjoy this whole cast of the Bear. And I felt like season 2 did them a really good amount of justice. Everyone getting their sort of their hero moment, and them like growing as a person. And in here, it felt like we kind of lost focus on that, and things got a little bit more moody, a little bit more atmospheric, in terms of the filmmaking and in terms of the pacing of the story. And although I could appreciate those, filmmaking elements, I think this show is still really well shot and really well edited at times. But I feel like the meat of the season was kind of a little bit lacking, and I felt like it shortchanged the characters and the plot a little bit. So it's a mixed bag. I think there are certainly more good elements in this season than there are bad, but it felt like those elements that were really highlights of the first two seasons were kind of like put on the back burner on this one, and that's just kind of how I feel about this season 3 as a whole. Good elements, certainly some great elements, but a lot of time in between that where it was just kind of like, this is okay.
No worries. Yeah, I definitely very very valid critiques on that. So now that we've given our rantings, guys, we are going to start talking about some moments and stuff like that in the show. Again, gonna be spoiler ish, so feel free to hop off now, but and come on back though when you have watched the show, so that way you could see what we think. But yeah, so I think this one picking up right after season 3 or season 2, was definitely I think the best choice because it ended on such a bittersweet note where the restaurant had its little family and friends night. It was doing really well, but Carmy got locked in the fridge. But even then, when that happened, Richie was able to just turn everything around, really help the restaurant. So essentially, it was that thing of like when Carmy's out of the mix, everything works a lot better. And then this season was a massive overcorrection to his character, which I can see a lot of people not jiving with. And I get it because we had all, like you were talking about, we had all those character moments last season to really just drive home, for I forgot the guy who plays the pastry chef. We had Marcus's moment. Marcus, Richie had the best episode I think of the entire series so far. We got to see what Carmy's family was like and how Sugar, you really appreciate her and what she's like in this entire show. Like, she is the saddest character because she embraces all that trauma but still holds it down. Her nickname is Sugar, so which can in baking and
a lot of characters call her mom.
yeah, like which in cooking and stuff in general, sugar is both a great thing, but also too much of it can be a really bad thing, which the Christmas episode exemplified that to her overbearing nature, definitely with her mom and stuff, who was a drunk, and Jamie Lee Curtis killed in that. But anyways, season 3, I think the way it went, with Carmy being the way he was, it made sense, but I could see why that turns a lot of people off, because how he had Claire and stuff like that, it's like he never learned a damn thing, and if anything, he just dug deeper into himself, closing everyone off and not accepting faults. Like, at least last season, he kind of knew he was messing up, but just got caught up in everything where he couldn't change himself quick enough. He was just, so much was going on, So I think that was it was both good and bad for me, because it's like it made sense. That's how his family is, they just bottle things up and just keep going. But it's like it kind of is hinting he's almost down the path of his brother and his mom, unfortunately, and everyone was just kind of trying to catch up with him, which was just like fucked. Especially I think episode 3 when they're like doing all the non-negotiables. That one gave me the most anxiety since the ticket episode in season 1, because it's like, dude, you are changing stuff way too much. These are people that were working a small sandwich shop, and now you're trying to make it a Michelin star restaurant right out the gate. Like, there's got to be some progression here. So I felt bad for everybody. Was just kind of at Carmi's mercy this season. And like, real quick, I just want to get this out before I forget how I was talking about the off pacing and stuff. Like, you said it perfectly. 1 and 2 had such fast pacing; they're just bam, 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 straight to the point. This one was definitely more artsy and slowing down, but chaotic at moments. Because I think it's just trying to, because the show is essentially paying homage to a lot of businesses and how that goes down. Like, first season was planning it, getting it ready. Season 2 was getting it set up and starting it, and 3 is like you're hitting the ground running. And a lot of businesses in the restaurant industry, they don't survive their first year. Like, there's a lot that open up and fail pretty easily, and it's sad, but that's just, it's a tough business. I don't know how it's so tough, but I mean, you kind of get an idea with this show. Again, it's very fictionalized, so I don't know how accurate it is, but I see that conversation coming up more on like social media and stuff when you look up this show. So I think that's why the pacing was so off, because like a business, it's all over the place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that, and that's a pretty good observation, and I didn't really think about it in that sense. But yeah, if you think of each season as different steps in like opening up as a restaurant, that could kind of give you like a perspective into the meta narrative of the show as a whole. So that's a pretty good point, and that's something I'm gonna definitely think about. As going forward and leading into season 4 that we're going to be getting at some point, hopefully next year, or hopefully not the year after. But we're going to see how these things turn out. Sometimes the wait is much longer than you want it to be. So I have been seeing how like some people have not been really enjoying what they've done with Carmi this season. And yeah, like you, I agree that I can see why that would turn a lot of people off. But I think in terms of a narrative point and in terms of a character thing, and like you, I think it also does make sense, and it's one of the things that did work for me this season, even though I think it shouldn't have gone as long as it did. I think maybe there should have been a point where we do see his like character change, at least towards the end of the season. But it seems like they took the whole season to sort of get him to that point. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes in season 4. But him sort of the whole show was about people and their interactions and how they affect each other, and in particular with these characters and Carmi's character, it's always been about sort of the cycles of abuse. We like you mentioned in that episode in season 2 where we get to see his family, and we get to peer into like why he is the way he is, and because of how he grew up and the environment that he grew up in. This season I did like that we got to see, even though it did get a little repetitive, I did like that we got to see how he got to the point he is in his professional life, as a chef. We get to dig into his sort of backstory and, the chef and the people he learned under, and sort of and how that sort of affected him, with him and his mentor, played by, Joel McHale, and how he treated him. And then we get to see that cycle sort of repeat itself in the way that he's treating Iowa Dabiri's character, this season, and everyone in the restaurant as a whole. So I think, sort of living in that sort of cycle, I thought that was a good choice in my opinion. Seeing him not deal with his issues and it manifesting itself into being sort of a bad thing for him and the people around him as a whole. So I did really enjoy what they did with his character this season. Another character that I really did enjoy this season was also Sugar, like you mentioned, getting to learn more about her last season, her taking more of a role within the restaurant at last season, and then coming into this season. The episode that we get of her, she has that character centric episode this season. Probably my favorite episode of number 3. I thought it was a really good look into her and her dealing with her trauma and her growing up. And I feel like we should have gotten more of that with the other characters, because I do think Carmi and Sugar are probably the better served this season, whereas Sydney and Richie are kind of stuck in that same place where they were last season. Obviously Richie had a lot of great progression last season, but it seems like this one he hasn't really gone through much in terms of getting past that. We know he found love for doing the thing that he does, but in terms of his personal life, he's kind of still in the same place where he was, kind of pining over his ex and not really moving forward and trying to figure out how to be a dad to his daughter, and how that relationship's going to be. It didn't feel like there was enough movement on that one. And in terms of Sydney's character, her having sort of second thoughts and doubts, and nervous about like the restaurant, and not wanting to sign being onto a partner of the restaurant, and that was how sort of last season ended. And here it's the same thing. So I feel like it was unfortunate that we didn't get movement on those two characters, because I really like those two characters in particular. And it just felt like Marcus was just absent this whole season, and that was unfortunate, I think. And yeah, Tina does get a pretty really good character centric episode, but it being a flashback episode, we don't really learn too much new about her that we didn't. As much as I love that episode, and obviously her interactions with Michael, it gave us more insight about him. And in terms of pushing her forward, and her being taking more of a bigger role within the restaurant, I felt like we didn't really get much of that. She's kind of in this new bigger role. It would have been nice to see her dealing with those sort of all those expectations, and seeing how Carmi's affecting her too, and how she's like dealing with all that. I don't feel like we got it that much in this season.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. I think that was the flaw with this season. That it was so much flashback. Like Tina's episode, Iowa DeBerry directed that. It was great, but that episode, the first episode,
really well put together.
The first episode just being basically a cut up of Carmi's past and dealing with Christmas, and then the restaurant. It's like, dude, it was just way too much going backwards when it should have been moving forward still. And not to say we don't. Like Tina's episode, I think it definitely clarified why she was so bitter when all these things started changing, because she finally felt like she found a place after losing her job and stuff, that Sydney and Carmi were just changing stuff up to a crazy point. But I will say with Richie's character, I think there's just a little bit more I think for me, the only thing I really need to see is for him to forgive Carmi and just kind of deal with his bullshit, because he knows that family. Like, why are you still so bitter about this? Like, clearly Carmi's not going to change anytime soon. Hopefully he does, but that was the thing. I think it like, kind of like how you're talking about, it held it, like it just stayed at the same place. It's like, because he moved so much last season, this one is just baby steps for him, just dealing with the trauma that him and Carmi had. And then I'm glad. I think this kind of talking about like Richie's thing with getting over his ex and stuff like that, and meeting the new her fiance that they found out about last season, which is Josh Hartnett. I think I really like the cameos in this season, just because they were so much fun. Like the guy who played the computer, I don't know who that guy is. I want to say he's a big actor or someone important, but
I think he's a big chef. I could be wrong, but yeah, he's someone important.
The computer was great. That episode with him and John Cena as the other fat like cousin or brother killed it for me. But Josh Hartnett I'm just glad Josh Hartnett's coming back into things. I want to say since Wrath of Man, a couple years ago, I think it's like, dude, now he's getting more stuff again, which is great. He's just a gem of an actor. But yeah, like I said, the character progression for everyone that we had from last season just took a grinding halt. But that's just because with the restaurant doing what it's doing and what Carmi's doing what he's doing, it was just a hodgepodge, and it was just chaotic. But I think one of the highlights, we're talking about Sugar, is just her having the baby, and that some of that closure, that first step of reconciliation and moving forward with her mom was amazing. I know you were talking about how you did, I don't know if it's okay to say, Burn, but how you got a little emotional about it. I think it was just one of those.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. That was definitely what, like I was telling you, one of the more emotional episodes of a TV show I've seen. Probably, like I mentioned, I think I said probably since the Bill and Frank episode of The Last of Us season 1. Yeah. Just the whole, like you mentioned, the whole baby steps into sort of like dealing with your like trauma and like confronting it and getting into reconciliation. I love that whole aspect of that episode, and for her character, I just wish, that could have been the theme of the season, like steps of reconciliation, kind of get a little bit of hints of it for Carmi at the end there. But it feels like there was opportunity there for almost every character to sort of like go through that. And I feel like that's sort of one of those thematic and narrative things that they could have stuck the landing for this season and made it like, it is a little bit of slower and a little bit more of a nostalgic type of season, looking back into flashbacks and things. So maybe, this season could have served itself well if it like dealt with the past a little bit more like confrontational, in my opinion. But sorry, go ahead and see what you're going to say.
No, that's fine, Bern. I appreciate that. It's just one of those things that I think, how you're talking about hope for reconciliation, I think we're going to see more of that season 4, or at least we should, because of Sugar and their destructive mom, who was an alcoholic, and now she's been sober, which there was some context to that. She's still crazy and out there, but the fact that she's more self-aware, she actually does feel bad for everything that's happened, but she's also like, we can't change it, but I want to do better now. It's just, I think it's hope for Carmi, and the way the season ended off is definitely a sign like they're kind of aware of this shit, and now it's a matter of actually putting it into actions and moving forward. So I'm really hopeful for next season with that. I think the end of the season, the last episode, was still really good. Not as great as last one, mind you, but it was just great to see all, like, finding out that Chef Terry's retiring and the restaurant's closing down for good was a big, like, what the fuck for me, just because that's where Richie became Richie. That's where, Carmi trained, and it was the best restaurant in the world. So much happened in that restaurant, and it's like, damn. So it was kind of nice to see David Poulter come back, especially because he was actually really funny. Just came off like
Will Poulter?
Will Poulter. I mean, yeah, I don't know why I call him David Poulter, but Will Poulter coming back just as just such a dork with all these other chefs, because they're all like big time chefs now from Chef Terry's restaurant. And the confrontation with Joel McHale's Chef David, oh my god, he seems like such a nice guy in real life. But I don't know, to be honest, but he plays the best douchebag characters ever.
Yeah.
Even Winger in Community, there were plenty of episodes I'm like, you're an asshole. Why are they friends with you? But this one, that was the cherry on top, like. And it kind of made sense why Carmi's so abusive, because how I thought about that while you were talking earlier, is that throughout his whole chef career, like his cooking career, he's had great people teach him a lot of stuff and be patient and nurturing to him. But it was just a Christmas moment, and then having Joel McHale as his head chef really messed him up. And it's just it's really unfortunate that this cycle happened in this season. But again, I'm hopeful for the next one that there is going to start being some. It's still going to be chaotic, I'm sure, but it's going to be forward progression again. Just because it's getting over all the craziness and the review of the restaurant since it just opened and stuff. So we'll have to see that. But I loved his confrontation with Chef David and how he's like, you're welcome. Like, you want to be the best. Now you're the best. Like, you were good when you were decent when I met you. Now you're excellent. And that's what you wanted, right? Kind of like throwing it back on him. It's like, oh, perfect, just gaslighting, mentality and everything. So unhealthy, but and then and then that, like how we were talking about Sydney, how she's not really moving anywhere, but and she's kind of at the same place where she's like, what do I want to do with the bear? Am I gonna stay? Am I gonna go? She definitely, I think she was definitely more likable this season. She was actually trying to be level-headed and stuff, in my opinion, with Richie and Carmi going back at it, just trying to, like, guys, let's just work. Let's just focus on the work, please. Stop fucking around. So I liked her a little bit better this season. And like I said, I'm still really hopeful for it. I think this season is very divided amongst people, but that's why I gave it a 4 out of 5, because it was still really good to me.
I mean, it definitely seems like it's a two-parter. I mean, definitely by the way the show ends. This season, not with the title card, the bear, but with to be continued. It's like, okay, this is very much a setup, and that is unfortunate, because I really wish the season could have just like stood on its own. That way, like, kind of. It gets to succeed or fail on its own merit, but kind of where it is right now, we kind of have to see how season 4 turns out to really see how we feel as a whole with this season, since it's kind of at a holding pattern right now in terms of narrative and in terms of characters. Everyone's sort of like in the same place, like I mentioned, where they were at the end of season 2. so it seems like they're kind of like progressing their way into like sort of whatever's going to happen in season 4. But yeah, I wish it wasn't the case where we had to wait for another season to sort of clarify or sort of solidify our thoughts on this one, because each season is, even though like they're certainly setting things up for the next one, in terms of 1 to 2 and 2 to 3, they all had their narrative points that they hit, and you felt satisfied by the end of it, like, okay, this feels like a full complete story with these characters. Now let's just see where they go next. And this one, it's very much like, okay, well, now I gotta watch the next one before I know how I feel about this one. So yeah, that is the unfortunate aspect of it. And although I do love these characters and I love spending just time in this world that they created with the bear, it was frustrating, not having that sense of closure, or sort of not so much closure, but a sense of direction, where it's like, okay, where are we really trying to lead these characters to? As you mentioned, it could kind of go either way at this point, and that's fine. But again, in terms of a whole season leaving you feeling that way, that's why I kind of gave it a 3 out of 5, because it was just, there were too many things left unfinished, too many threads that were left unwrapped. And although I think it's okay to have that, I don't think it should have been as many as it is now.
That's very fair. And again, I like that's not a valid. Like, I do agree with certain criticisms. I just, I'm just one of those people that I still like it. I still like what I like, and not to say you didn't like it. I just, they just don't bother me as much. Just kind of see where it goes.
And that's just all terms of narrative stuff. Again, I still think the production of this show is unmatched almost. Again, the cinematography, the editing, which I think, I don't know if they've won awards for editing, but I think the editing of the show, it's one of the few shows, or the few times I've seen like media where I feel like the editing is the star of the show, So I think, that's certainly the case even for this season, where I felt like, yeah, everything's kind of slowed down. I think even in that sort of slower pace, those things still very much shine, including the performances.
Absolutely. But that's all I got about this season. Burn, any other last minute thoughts you had before we wrap it up?
No, I mean, just I can't wait to see season 4.
Yeah, hopefully we get it, because I think the season 2 came out last year, so hopefully.
Yeah, they've been every year, so it hasn't been too long. Oh, wait, at least the last few haven't.
Yeah, so I'm hoping we'll get season 4 next year. I think it's been greenlit, where it took a little bit longer after season 2 dropped, where it's like, oh yeah, season 3 is happening. So hopefully we'll find out soon about that. But like we said before, guys, please let us know what you thought about it in the comments. We'd love to get your thoughts on that for our first Bear review. We'll definitely, season 4 happens, we're definitely going to keep them going. But until next time, everyone, stay bodacious and just keep on ranting for us.
Absolutely, everybody. Be good, be safe, and as always, we'll catch y'all on the next one.